Vishnu Sahasranama, name number 831, Sapta-jihva. Sapta means 7, jiva means tongue. This name means the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, who has 7 tongues. And we may wonder, well, which form of the Lord is that? We have heard of Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha. We know the Lord has 4 arms, sometimes 6 arms, sometimes 8 arms, sometimes 10 arms. But 7 tongues, which form of the Lord is that? The commentators clarify that here, tongue means a tongue of fire. In many languages, including in English, the certain shape of the fire as it burns is referred to as a tongue because it has a shape somewhat resembling tongues. Of course, tongues appear differently in humans and other living beings. The tongues of mammals are quite similar in their shape, but anyway, when we say tongue, it somewhat resembles the tongue, or as much of it as is visible within the mouth of a human. So, Agni, fire, is always described in the Vedic literature as having 7 tongues, or different kinds of tongues. Parashara Bhatta, commenting on this name and extracting the meaning of this name, refers to the Paushkara Samhita, a Vedic text. Tad vaktra devatanam cha hutabuk parameshvara mantraputam yad adaya hutam ajapurasaram brahmanda bhuvanam sarvam santarpayati sarvada. The Supreme Lord in the form of Hutabuk, which means fire. Hutabuk means that which enjoys the offering, the fire. So the Supreme Lord in the form of fire carries to the gods the offerings that are sanctified by mantras and made in a sacrifice along with ghee. And in this way the Lord always pleases the entire universes. The understanding is that in Vedic sacrifices, fire sacrifices, which are a huge part of Vedic culture, not so prominent at the present time, but a huge part of Vedic culture, that various offerings are made into the fire along with certain mantras and various procedures. And in this way, the fire, by accepting them, carries the offerings to the gods, who in reciprocation make arrangements for the prosperity and overall well-being of human beings by supplying, for instance, if different demigods supply different things, by supplying, for instance, timely rain in the right proportion, and the sun gives light and heat just right, and seasons are regulated by the sun, the movements of the sun and the moon and the different planets, and the humans' participation in this in order to bring auspiciousness for humans and for the whole earthly planet is done by performing sacrifices. We often wonder why there's so much trouble in the world and it seems to be getting worse all the time, one major reason is a lack of sacrifice performed to please the gods. And ultimately the Supreme Lord on top of the whole system. Now, we may doubt all this and think that this is just some ancient poppycock dreamed up by people who have no modern scientific understanding of the actual workings of the universe. But from the Vedic perspective, from the perspective of today's followers of Vedic understanding, who are also very much aware of contemporary claims of science, it is rather those who claim that contemporary science itself has all the answers, or at least the methodology to supply the answers, and that tales of gods in ancient cultures are all just imaginary. The followers of the Vedic culture would say rather it is the contemporary materialistic scientific outlook that is lacking, because it doesn't take into account, or it doesn't have knowledge of the complexity of the universe, and that it is controlled by the Supreme Person, and a lot of the work is delegated to sub-controllers, devatas. That's translated by Srila Prabhupada in English as demigods. They don't know about that. There are so many subtle workings of mantras and tantras and mudras. There's so many subtleties which are not understood. The Vedic knowledge has been denigrated, has been cast aside as useless mumblings of ancient imaginers, but actually the Vedic knowledge has so much to offer. But the very paradigm of the contemporary materialistic so-called scientific outlook doesn't even allow entrance into that paradigm. So, yes, it is a fact that the Supreme Lord carries the oblations in the fire to the various demigods. Now, generally it's understood that the demigod Agni does that. He himself is a demigod, and he acts as an intermediary by carrying oblations in the fire to the various gods. That's also true. But it's also true that, of course, whatever all the various demigods can do, they can only do because they're empowered to do so by the Supreme Lord. And specifically this vital function of carrying the oblations to the demigods is done by the Supreme Lord himself. But he does so through the agency of Agni. He does so, it's him doing it, but he does so through the agency of Agni. The Mundaka-upanishad gives the names of these 7 tongues, and they're all goddesses. When you see fire, you may think, well, it's fire. But we know there is the presence of Agni, the person, the devata, who manifests in the form of fire, and the various kinds of flames. There are 7 kinds of flames described, and they're all various goddesses. In Vedic culture, everything is understood to be personal. Different kinds of clouds, different kinds of winds, the overseer of the clouds, the overseer of the winds, the different seasons, the moon, the wife of the moon. So many things are understood to be personal, whereas contemporary science, the contemporary scientific outlook, makes us believe that everything is impersonal. Everything is going on simply by, what do they call it? A self-organizing universe, which is quite unscientific in the very concept. Anyway, the fire's 7 tongues are described in Mundaka Upanishad as Kali, Karali, Cha, Manojava, Cha, Sulohitaya, Cha, Sudhumravarna, Spulingini, Vishvaruchi, Cha, Devi, Lelayamana, Iti, Sapta-jihva. Translations of these names. Kali, black. This is not exactly the same as the very well-known Devi, Kali, who is a form of Durga, wife of Shiva. Then Karali. Kali literally means black. Karali means ferocious, terrible. Manojava means she who is as swift as the wind, swift as the mind. Sulohita, very, very red. Sudhumravarna, purple, purple in color. Svulingini, emitting sparks. And Vishvarupi, shaped in various forms. All of them have the duty, the different devas and devis, demigods and demigoddesses, have different functions to perform. They have duties. So they have to nourish the gods by receiving the oblations and carrying them to the respective gods. And when yajna or sacrifice is performed, the Supreme Lord himself accepts all the offerings made by the performers through these 7 tongues of fire. And then he accepts them. He's known as Yajna Book, the enjoyer in the sacrifice. Yajna Book is a name coming up in Vishnu Sahasranama. And it's he who sees that these offerings reach their respective deities. Another meaning is that Agni, another meaning of Sapta-jihva is that Agni, the god of fire, has as his antaryami the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. Antaryami means the indweller. He dwells within the heart of every living being, whether the great and powerful demigods or the most insignificant germ. He lives with the individual jiva. So whatever the individual jiva does is possible by the presence of the Supreme Lord within his heart, and therefore Sapta-jihva, referring to Agni, who has 7 kinds of tongues, points to the Supreme Lord as the one who makes Agni what he is, or makes everything fire, makes fire what it is. He is the one. For that matter, he makes fire what it is. Why is fire like fire? Why is water like water? It's all because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Philosophers of science, who ponder on very deep existential questions such as why is fire like fire? The answer is because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, thus wishes and deigns. Baladev Vidyabhushan, he gives us slightly nuanced understanding of this name from those we have discussed so far. It is because of him that fire has 7 tongues. It's because of him. Now I'm going on to some comments which I've added, which are not in the traditional commentaries. Everything in a sacrifice is Krishna, as Krishna himself states in Bhagavad Gita, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavya Brahmagnau Brahmana Hutam Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. Everything, what is offered in the fire itself, Brahmagni, the offerer, the offering, the goal to where it goes, the work that is undertaken to perform the sacrifice, it's all Krishna. As he even more specifically says elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita, Aham kratur aham yagya, swadhaham aham aushadham, mantroham aham evajam, aham agnir aham hutam. Kratu is one kind. Krishna says, aham, I am the kratu, which is a kind of Vedic sacrifice, or the rituals. So it can be slightly differentiated from yagya in the rituals and the performance of the sacrifice. And I am the kratu, I am the yagya, the sacrifice itself. I am the offering into the fire. I am the herbs, the chant, the mantras which are chanted. I am the ghee, I am the fire, and I am the offering. So here, especially we are emphasizing here as we're discussing Sapta-jihva. Here Krishna identifies himself with the fire, with the Agni, which is by nature 7-tongued. As I said, Vedic sacrifice, fire sacrifice is very much central to Vedic culture. We don't see so much of it nowadays. In Kali Yuga, the recommended sacrifice is Sankirtan Yagya, as is known by all scholars of Vedic culture, whether it's Madhva Sampradaya, Ramanuja Sampradaya, or even the Shankara Advaita Sampradaya, knows that the chanting of the name of Hari is the Yagya for Kali Yuga, because it is so mentioned in the Vedic literature. And there are many, many references in this regard, which I presume that those who kindly take the interest to listen to this series of talks are well aware of, that in Kali Yuga, yagya, what is normally referred to as yagya, sacrifice, is done by congregational chanting of the name of Hari. We may say, well, where's the fire? Where's the flame? How can it be called a sacrifice? Of course, there are many kinds of sacrifice. There's not only fire sacrifices. We hear in Gita and elsewhere of the various sacrifices that can be performed. Study is one kind of sacrifice. Work is one kind of sacrifice, if done. Of course, all of these have to be done in the right consciousness and in the right way to be understood as such. But Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his Samodhan Bhashya, in which he comments on the Shikshashtaka, the 8 verses of instruction by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as collected in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he describes that the 7 tongues of fire are also seen in the Sankirtan Yajna. And he equates the 7 points made by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshashtaka. In the first verse, Bhaktivinoda Thakur equates them as the 7 tongues of the fire of the Sankirtan Yajna. The first, Chaitodarpana Marjanam, cleansing the mirror of the heart. This is the first tongue of the fire of Sankirtan. Bhavamahadavagni nirvapanam, extinguishing the blazing forest fire of material existence. Shriya Kairava Chandrika Vitarana. This is very complex and Alankarik Bhasha, means ornamental language. It spreads the rays of the moonshine. It's like the moonshine which spreads to open up the white lily. There's a certain kind of lily which opens only when the moon shines on it. So in the same way, the holy name, congregational chanting of the holy name, distributes the moonshine of the moonshine which nourishes the white lily of good fortune, Shreya, good fortune, the highest good fortune for all. Srila Prabhupada translates this as it spreads the rays, the Harinam Sankirtan, Sri Krishna Sankirtan spreads the rays of the benediction moon. Next, Vidyavadhu Jivana. It is the life of all knowledge. Vidyavadhu. The wife, the life of the wife of all actual knowledge. One cannot understand Vedic knowledge without benediction from Krishna, which is enabled particularly in this age by chanting of the holy names of Krishna. The fifth of these flames of the Sankirtan Yajna, the fire of the Sankirtan Yajna, Anandam Buddhi Varajanam. It expands the ocean of bliss, which is love of Krishna. The sixth, Purnamrita Svadanam. It enables one to taste nectar at every step in one's life. And Saravatma Snapanam. The whole being of the devotee, by engaging in Sankirtan, is completely cleansed. It's a total bath which completely cleanses away all dirt. Dirt in the form of desires for anything than selfless devotional service. So in this way, the devotees chant, and the Sankirtan Yajna, who is Krishna himself, the holy name, carries their desires to Krishna. And also, we can say the flames of the Sankirtan Yajna, in another allegorical usage, destroys all the bad things in the hearts of the devotees, and then carries this Chaito Darpana Marjanam, and then carries on one hand, it destroys all the bad things, just like smelting iron ore or gold, the gold that comes in raw form, by smelting, the gold is separated or the iron is separated from the unnecessary things, and then in this way all the bad things are taken out, and then beautiful gold ornaments or useful iron utensils can be used to offer to Krishna, or for various usages to Krishna. So it's an offering. In this Sankirtan Yajna, the devotees themselves, they're offering themselves to Krishna to be burned in the fire of Sankirtan Yajna and purified so that they may be suitable for offering to him. Satyadeva Vashishta, who always has many practical, this-worldly explanations of the names of Vishnu Sahasranama, which are fully in line with Shastra. He always quotes from Shastra, which are fully in line with Shastra and are fully in the line of devotion. He takes the word 7 to mean many, which is possible. It's quite possible in Sanskrit understanding. It's usually done for larger numbers, like shata for 100, or sahasra, 1,000. But it can be. So if such a great scholar as Satyadeva Vashishta takes it like that, we can know for sure that he is doing it in line with the Vedic usage. When we say a great scholar, it doesn't mean someone who's read and memorized things, but he also, in his explanations, a true Vedic scholar acts always within the parameters of Vedic scholarship. He doesn't try to impose other parameters upon it. Sapta iti aneko palakshanam aneka prakara jihvam vidhata iti. Saptadeva Vashishta says that just as he himself, the Supreme Lord, has 7 tongues, so this name can be understood to mean that he has endowed creatures within his creation with many different types of tongues suitable to their different species. So we find different kinds of tongues. Humans have quite soft tongues in comparison to those of, for instance, cows. Sometimes when we pet a cow, they respond affectionately by licking our skin. That's what they do to their calf. They affectionately lick their calf. And we find it quite rough. It's quite abrasive to the skin. That roughness of the cow's tongue is very suitable for licking her calf, because that kind of roughness is needed for the calf, which has the skin with a lot of hair, and it's very suitable for, by the Supreme Lord's arrangement, the roughness of the cow's tongue is very beneficial for the calf's body, but it's not very beneficial for human bodies. Snakes have forked tongues. Exactly the biological reason for that, I don't know, but definitely there must be some purpose. It's not just as the ridiculous so-called rational and logical so-called scientists say that the universe is self-organizing. Everything is organized, everything is arranged in this universe. All the biological and cosmological arrangements are done by the Supreme Lord. There's a purpose for everything. So different kinds of tongues and different kinds of living beings use these tongues in different ways. The mammalian tongues, they are suitable for not only for licking up food, but also for tasting it, and to begin the digestive process. The food consumed by different species through the tongue, along with the pranavayu, along with air, certain forms of internal air, they receive and prepare food that is ingested for dispatch toward the stomach, and in this way it is offered into the Jataragni. In Vedic understanding, the stomachic, what is called the stomachic juices, which are the digestive juices, which is highly acidic. That's the contemporary understanding, which is not incorrect, but the Vedic depiction of it is as Jataragni. There's a certain kind of manifestation of fire within the stomach which causes digestion. And so what the tongue does, the various kinds of tongues, they offer food to fire by receiving and ingesting it. Another suggestion has been made that the 7 tongues, the Supreme Lord is called seven-tongued because he is glorified through 7 scriptural works. So there are 7 main divisions of scriptural works, and these are of course recited by the tongue. So these 7 kinds of works are the 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, and then the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and the Pancharantras. Of course, the Vedic corpus can be expanded on, but these 7 forms, or the understanding of what constitutes the Vedic corpus, can be broader also. The Puranas haven't been mentioned here, but that's one suggestion from a member of the Madhva Sampradaya. That's the meaning of this name, 7-tongued. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Dante nithaya chunakam padayo nipatya kritva chakar kushatame tadaham bravimi he sadhava sakala eva vihaya durat Gauranga Chandra Charane Kurutana Radha Parivadatu Jano Yata Tatava Nanumukaro Navayang Vicharyamaha Hari Rasa Madhira Madati Mata Bhuvi Vilutama Natama Nirvishama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare